Kia ora and welcome to Tiny Talks, the podcast where big ideas grow from tiny moments. This show is proudly powered by Tiny Nation, Aotearoa's leading provider of high-quality, home-based early childhood education. At Tiny Nation, we believe that relationships are the foundation of learning, and that's exactly what we explore here. Whether you're an educator, a parent, or simply passionate about children, you're in the right place. Let's dive in. In this episode, Sarah Aiono shares why play-based learning is not just developmentally appropriate, it's neurologically essential. We explore how play supports executive function, emotional regulation, and school readiness, and what high-quality play looks like in early childhood education settings. This is essential listening for educators, leaders, and anyone shaping early learning environments. Kia ora koutou and welcome to the latest episode of Tiny Nation's Tiny Talks. I'm Erin Maloney, and in this episode of Tiny Talks, we're joined by Sarah Aiono. Sarah is the CEO and co-director of Longworth Education and an internationally recognised advocate for play pedagogy. As a former classroom teacher, accredited PLD facilitator, researcher, author, and speaker, Sarah is known for combining deep educational insight with practical, actionable strategies. Her approach is all about connecting the dots between policy and practice, working alongside teachers to harness the power of play and innovation. Kia ora, Sarah, how are you doing?
Kia ora, Erin. It's lovely to be with you. Thank you.
Thank you so much for being here. So let's go way back to the start where you can share a little bit more with us about how you have championed play-based learning. What first drew you to this approach and why do you believe it is so essential for our tamariki?
Well, what I guess first drew me to it was actually the work that I was doing prior to the role I'm in now. So before I came into this role and Longworth Education was created, I was working as a resource teacher of learning and behaviour. And my role primarily was working in primary schools with teachers who had requested the support of someone to go in and have a look maybe at some children who were having a bit of trouble in class. Particularly in behaviour. We were learning and behaviour, but behaviour was very much my area in particular I was interested in. So these would be kids who would be maybe off task, disruptive in class, potentially causing problems in class, upending classrooms, destroying classrooms, those kinds of things. Really, my first job was to go in and go, well, what's going on for this kid? You know, why is this kid sitting here and losing the plot? And what would be the reasons for that? And what I found particularly over that time, was that we were in a time in education over the national standards time. So this was a period in our policy history where teachers in schools were required to teach children to a point where we needed to get them to a specific standard at the end. Say, for example, at the end of the first year of school, they had to read to a certain year level. It was green, actually, the reading level they needed to get to. And if they got to green reading level, then it meant that they were doing really well and that was what we expected of all these 5-year-olds that had started school. The problem is that we don't get children learning in exactly the same way all the time, and that learning happens in a sort of fragmented up, down, sideways kind of way, but generally, and we would hope in a forward motion. And so what was happening was that we were getting this mismatch between what teachers were trying to have children do and what they were actually working with in the classroom. And often that mismatch was asking kids too much. They were trying to get kids to do too much beyond what their capability was. And I don't know about you, but when I've kind of been put in a situation where someone's telling me something that I have to do and I have to do and I have to do it and I don't get it, and the more they ask me to do it, the more dumb I feel and the more incapable I feel, then I'm going to kind of lose the plot a little bit. Yeah. Maybe as an adult, I might not throw a chair or bite someone. I might know that that's not quite what I'm supposed to do, even though probably inside I feel like doing that. Our 5 and 6-year-olds maybe don't have that capability of being able to communicate that's how they're feeling. And so we were seeing it in behaviour. So I would sit in these classrooms and think, you know what? I'd actually roll around on the back of the mat here right now because I'd be pretty bored too if I was you, you know, and I could kind of empathise with these kids as they were being asked to do things that just were beyond their capability. So that kind of made me think, well, how do we learn? How is it that the human being has come to be where we're at now when actually school and formal learning is quite a relatively new invention in the history of the world. We haven't really had formal schooling up until about the Victorian time, certainly in terms of public access. So how did we all learn before that? And when you take a deep dive into the research, you can see that actually play is the curriculum of learning. It's the curriculum of life. And so that's really what got me involved in studying play, understanding how humans learn, and then translating that into how do we use this as an educational resource while still honouring what we know the magic is about play for our children as well.
That leads beautifully into my next question, which is obviously we know that we like to play and that it feels good, but we also know more and more that there's a growing neuroscience behind play. So can you share a little bit about what's happening in the brain of a child when they're engaging in that open-ended, joyful play that we love watching them do?
Yeah, so there's a heap of stuff going on in our brains, which it's kind of why we're wired to play. So again, when we think about how the brain evolves, we know, for example, that when humans are born, if everything's gone well, then we've got this brain sitting in our little baby's heads, but we know that everything's not all quite connected yet. And our brains, particularly as humans, need about 20 to 25 years for everything to really be connected and operating to the potential that we've got in our heads to be able to do, sometimes to 30 if you're a male. So we need that big, long run-in to be able to grow all the neural pathways and connect everything up. So when we're a baby, the initial growth that we need is to be able to firstly just get a hold of our body, right? And start that motor coordination and our bodily functions and all that kind of stuff. And so even just the act of play in itself there, where we are just interacting with another person, or where we've got someone that's waving something in front of us, or all of those sorts of things as humans, we're kind of inherently wired to do these things to a baby for the baby to kind of respond back. And as a result, the neural pathways connect up, being moved around, being sat up, not I suppose forcefully, but in ways that we want to be able to see the world. I've got my little 6-month grandchild at the moment who will not lie down. Like, he just does not want to lie down. He lets everyone know he wants to be sat up. He doesn't have that trunk control himself yet. But his brain's saying, I want to have a look up, so I'm going to make sure you know you need to sit me up right now, or you're all going to pay for it. So your brain's telling you you've got to get moving. We know that movement is the thing that grows brains, not sitting still. So we need to move first of all. Play makes us move, right? We also know that once we start to get this movement in our body, then we start to get our emotional system coming on board. And it's that lovely sort of 2 and 3 year old level where our emotions are a little bit unpredictable at times, and we might get an overreaction to something or an underreaction. But play again enables us to have the experiences where we can learn how to regulate ourselves. So we might have an older sibling, or we might be in our care home and there are some other children there and they do something in play we don't like. We get the chance to practice our emotional response, whether it's appropriate or not, and then we learn from that. We also know in the brain that, we have this executive function section, which is sort of up in the prefrontal cortex here. And that executive function section, we know now from literature, is actually the thing that predicts success in life. Not whether you can read or write, but it's actually the better executive function we have, the better outcomes in life that we have in general. And so this is things like just being able to regulate our emotions, our working memory, remembering things, being able to initiate tasks, being able to manage our impulses, being able to think quickly and kind of shift across different things. These are all things that we can't have formal lessons for. And the only way we learn these things is when we're interacting with other people, and maybe we're trying to do something that someone else doesn't want to do or has a different opinion about, and we've got to interact with them and try and get some consensus. We have to manage ourselves to learn to wait and take turns, and all of these things help actually develop that executive function in the brain. And then probably 2 other areas, I could go on about this forever, but 2 other areas is the our sensory development. So particularly, obviously, our main senses develop through our interaction with the world, but we have our proprioceptor and vestibular systems. And our vestibular system helps us think about balance and coordination. And our proprioceptor system is about our sort of spatial awareness, where our body is in space. Now, when you're about 2 or 3 and you've kind of got most of those physical movements reasonably under control, still a little bit, stumbly here and there, but you've got it really. This is when your brain kind of goes, okay, so you think you can swing, right? We're going to get you on the swing, but I want you to swing and put your head back because that feels really good, right? When you're swinging and your head goes back. Or I want you to climb over the side of the sofa and hang off the side of the sofa and play with your dolls upside down.
Mm.
To adults, we'd look at that and go, oh my gosh, are you comfortable like that? But the brain's going, in order for me to grow my proprioceptor awareness system, I need to be upside down. I need you to put my brain into different positions so that we connect everything up and so that you get all this feedback from the environment to know where your body is and be able to operate within that body and that spatial awareness. So it might look random, and certainly children don't know that that's why they're doing it, but the brain's got it all worked out and is telling them that, hey, this feels good, keep doing it. And so that leads to the chemical sort of that comes out of play, which was what we call brain-derived neurotrophic factor, or BDNF. And BDNF is this chemical that kind of gives off this feeling of joy, fun, excitement, happiness. It leads to dopamine and serotonin, and that means that we'll do more of it. So when we lie upside down hanging over the side of the sofa, it feels good. So keep doing it, and then we'll grow our neural pathways. So it's an amazing machine, our brain, that understands the value of play probably more so than we do.
That's good to know for the next time I find my 4-year-old dangling over the side of the couch.
Yeah.
And feel the need to control the messiness of the limbs.
Yeah, absolutely.
So just leading on from that, you've talked really nicely about that higher order thinking and executive functioning that play kind of encourages. And I know we talk a lot at Tiny Nation with families and whānau around the whole idea of transition to school and that socialization aspect, I suppose, in terms of children being able to engage socially with each other, with adults in the spaces that they're in, and really learn and grow in those relationships and connections. In terms of that social development, how does play lend itself to?
Well, play is sort of the playground for social agility, right? So if we only ever play by ourselves, we'll never meet anyone that thinks differently to us, might disagree with us, might make us mad, sad, might make us really happy. We don't get an experience where we are meeting different from us. And so play enables the conditions for us to practice social agility. Now, a word of caution, because I'm very conscious that often as parents, we want our children to have lots of friends and to interact and be social and everything like that. That might not be your child, and that's okay. We don't want social play or cooperative play to be sort of the end goal, and if we get that, that's a sort of an A+. But we do know that we live in a social world, and so we have to be able to have enough social skills to be able to move through the world in what we would call a pro-social way, in a way that's hopefully not harming to others or ourselves. And so play gives us that opportunity to do that. But equally, we want play to be able to give children time to decompress as well. So they should be able to move away from social play as well as back into social play as well. One of the things that certainly in the research that we've been involved in is looking particularly at building emotional literacy is very important. Often adults, I suppose, describe that they would really like children to have a sense of empathy towards others, and to, particularly if they've hurt someone or they've done something in a way that has caused someone else to be sad or mad, they want that child to sort of almost show sort of empathy, or I suppose a sense of self-reflection. I did that to that person and I need to resolve it. We know that empathy is actually a quite a complex skill that doesn't easily develop in young people. It takes years to develop. And what we need to be able to do is firstly help children develop their emotional literacy. And that's something that we don't actually do so well unless we're doing it really intentionally. We tend to maybe deal with children who have having a meltdown or who are really sad. We attend to those feelings, but we don't often grow emotional literacy in the really broad range of emotions that humans can experience. I'm talking things like joy, wonder, pride, feeling ecstatic or jealous, envious, frustrated, discontent. There's this sort of different shades of emotions. And so in play, one of the things that we can really work on is how we develop children's awareness of their own emotions. And so that then once they have a good bank of emotional literacy, that then gives the foundation for how they might recognize those emotions in others. But until they can do that, then they can't develop empathy for how other people are feeling. So this is again why we kind of start at the foundation. We grow social and emotional skills in that sort of interaction that we have in quite a nice, safe setting, which is play, before we get out into the real world where it can get a little hairy at times and we can't always navigate it how we would like.
Nice. This next question is one for our educators and those working in home-based environments, so also the mums and dads out there, I guess. In home-based early childhood settings, play can look beautifully different from centre-based or group-based environments. What does high-quality play look like in these more intimate relational spaces?
Really good question. Ideally, it would follow sort of what we call the characteristics of play that we're looking for. So the first one is that play is child-centered and child-led. So it's not about you setting up a activity station and the children can go over there and they put all their aprons on and they make their nice prints or they, make a certain thing out of Play-Doh and then they go and put it away and go on to the next thing. In a home-based setting, the child should be able to choose what they want to do and how they want to do it. That's not to say that you don't have rules and expectations and that they have a free-for-all in your house, but you can take their lead a lot more and you can support them and walk alongside them a lot more than maybe having a set up activity. So that's probably the first thing. The second thing is that we really focus on process rather than product. So again, sometimes in centres, something that might be on offer today is we're all making pirate hats, right? And here's the template for the pirate hat and here's where you fold it and you sit with the teacher and she'll fold it for you and wow, look, you've got this pirate hat and everyone's got the same pirate hat. You could have a child at home who loves pirates and you've built a pirate ship out of your couch pillows and you've got the pirate ship in the middle of the floor in your lounge and you need these pirate hats, but someone's got the colander from the kitchen, cabinets and that's gone on and someone else has got the gumboot and that's gone on and we've all got different pirate hats. And that depth of creativity is about the process in thinking of how we can use these unusual objects around the home for something other than they were designed for, in a way that you won't necessarily have that in a centre. Then we come to the third characteristic, which is around the rules and the structures are designed by the players themselves. So again, you've got your pirate ship in the middle of the lounge, and if the players then decide that this has become a hovercraft pirate ship, then that's fine. It's not this ready-made pirate ship that's sitting outside at the centre's playground and you must play pirates in that playground because it is a pirate ship. It can change all the time. I think there's a huge scope for a depth of imaginative play and creative play being at home because you can modify your environment so much more.
Yes.
And this really comes down to the adult and what the adult's comfortable doing. But I'd encourage adults to be really as flexible as you can in helping children modify their environment for their imaginative play. And I guess probably the biggest one of all, and this is why I was always someone that really, as a mum myself, championed home-based learning, was it's a safe environment. We know one of the characteristics of encouraging deep play is that the players are non-stressed and they are able to relax and have a relational connection in a way maybe a busy centre can't do because of the noise, the busyness and the different teachers on that day. Whereas if you've got the same person every day and you come to the same home every day and you know the kids that are there, it is an extension of your whānau, and really that relational safety means that the brain is in that sort of rest and digest stage rather than fight or flight, which means you're going to get a much deeper reflection of that in the play. Children will go into the creative process in a much deeper way than if they were in a stressed state in a centre.
Oh, I love that response. Great. So there you go, educators. You're doing all the right things.
Yep,
And
absolutely.
heuristic play, I think, is really big in these home-based environments. So it's nice to hear you talk about taking objects and reinventing a purpose for them that is outside of what they might have been originally intended for, because I think we do that really well in home-based.
Absolutely.
Resourcing up. So when a child is playing, how can educators and whānau recognise the learning that's actually happening, even when it looks messy or chaotic? And I'm asking this as a mum myself, because sometimes I do find myself in a little bit of overwhelm with the play situation. I know that, thankfully, being in early childhood, often there is the theory behind the practice and, a la carting lots of different innate objects around and putting them all into little special packages for us to unwrap in different areas of the home. The mess and chaos can be bountiful sometimes. So
Yeah.
so what would you say to educators and parents around the learning aspect of that as opposed to the overwhelm?
Well, just to address the overwhelm, because I think that really is the biggest barrier to deep play and learning coming together. And I think it's really an important aspect as a educator, as a parent, to recognise when that overwhelm is going to get in the way of the learning and recognise it for what it is in terms of your own regulation. So I'm the same. I like a nice tidy home. I'm a play person, but I like a nice tidy home. And I would often catch myself tidying up behind. And what that was is a reflection of my need, not the children's needs. So if you have that need, then maybe there's an area of the house that gets locked off, and that's your space it stays the same from morning till night. And it is your area where you can just go and have a little bit of downtime before you're back in an area where it's reflecting the children's needs at that time. I think it's important to honour that. Otherwise, you're not going to truly be able to accept what's going on in the play if you're not looking at yourself as well. So with that in mind, thinking about how we support children in that space and how we see the learning. One of the things I think that's really important is that we always look at what children are doing as a learning inquiry, not being naughty or not being non-compliant or whatever other label that, we've probably grown up with ourselves in our generation. Because quite honestly, most children will not be being naughty. They are communicating to you an inquiry that they have, a curiosity they have, or a need that they have, or a deficit that they have. So the inquiry might be, for example, I'm going to tip, all of these things out on the floor because I want to see what's at the bottom of the container. I didn't know that everything in the container was loose and is going to roll everywhere, and there was some glass in there, and now it's shattered on the kitchen floor because I just thought there was something in the bottom of the container. So it's what was the inquiry that led to that behaviour. And when we start to frame it up like that, yes, it's frustrating that now the rice is mixed in with the glass all over the floor, but it wasn't intentional. There was an inquiry there. And so this is our teaching moment. And there's sort of two aspects to that. One is when you're curious about this in the future, what are the steps you can take to so we can get some answers to your curiosity, maybe without destroying everything in the process. And two, how do we clean all this up now? Right? What's a way we can do this together so that there's a sense of responsibility there as well? If we've got a communication where maybe we're feeling like play is getting a bit loose or silly, or maybe kids are being misbehaving, often that's a communication that either they're not in a regulated state and that they're feeling anxious, or there's something that's up-regulating them that they can't quite manage themselves with. So that's a little indicator for us as to what the learning is there. Do I need to go in and co-regulate with this child and help kind of just bring them down? Are they anxious about something and we're seeing it being demonstrated out in the play in this way? Or do they have anything here to play with that they're interested in? Or is it all just boring and they're trying to create some entertainment for themselves, maybe not in such a good way?
Yeah.
So that's often when we have to kind of do a bit of an audit of the space and go, does the space reflect what the child is interested in and curious about? Does it prompt an inquiry that they would like to engage in somehow in their play? And then I think finally the third one is, what are the skill deficits? So we talk about this a lot when we see children maybe navigating social spaces and things like that. If you've got a child that is constantly in conflict with other children, Or I had a child I was actually watching the other day who her go-to skill was if she didn't get what she wanted, she would just huff and puff, sit on the floor, tears would go, and there'd be this stuff, right? Which would get kind of draining after a while, every 5 minutes when she didn't get what she wanted. But the teacher was doing a fabulous job of recognizing that that was her way of getting what she wanted. And so we weren't going to buy into that. But the moment that she was doing what we wanted, she got everything. She got loads of attention and she got lots of praise. And so it was just looking at how we change the response to the behavior so that we got a different behavior. So it's really, instead of kind of looking at play and going, oh, they're just mucking about, when are they going to do some real learning? It's starting by going, what are they inquiring about? What are they making sense of in the world? What are they telling me that they need? Or what are they telling me they can't do in a way that they can't tell me they can't do it? And then how can I step in and support them in that space?
Oh, I love that lens around curiosity and inquiry, like you say. I'll have to try that next time.
Yeah.
What, leading on from that, and you've kind of already started answering this question in terms of the adult's role in play and what happens when it gets a bit loose and there might be the need to audit the space and regulate things a little bit more. What would you say to our educators and teachers out there who feel this compelling need to teach during that play process? And how do we support children with that open-ended play without steering it too much?
Yeah, so I think this really goes to the heart of what we've always been taught a teacher looks like and sounds like. You know, when we've gone to teachers' college and we've been told that the teacher is the person sort of maybe at the front of the room, or the person that sits here and asks all the questions or directs children or sits and cuts things, or, you know, whatever our image of the teacher is what we would call that very formal Victorian image. But I want people to think about, you know, when they did their best learning, you know, who was alongside them and how were they learning? Often we learn on the job. We learn with someone that we have a relationship with that we respect, and they guide us and they mentor us. Sometimes we learn when someone lets us fail, and they step back, and then you go to them afterwards and they say, yeah, we knew that was going to happen, but we had to let you do it, right? So it really challenges that whole notion of what it means to be a teacher. One of the things that we work on a lot with teachers is this concept of being an intentional teacher. And there's some great research around this. Anne Epstein's sort of probably the seminal researcher in this space, but there's lots of others like Pianta and people like that talk about being an intentional teacher. Basically what it means is that you need to be able to explain why you've chosen to behave or teach in a certain way that will lead to the outcomes that you want for your children. So for example, if you've got children who are learning at the moment to stand up for themselves and play and articulate what they need, then you might actually see some of that start to happen and decide to step back and not intervene, because if you intervene, they'll default to you and they expect you to speak for them. So by you stepping back and going, I've still got an ear out, I know what's happening, but I can't look at them, because, you know, if you look at them, they're going to think you're in. So you don't look, you listen. And if you can hear that they're standing up for themselves, they're doing all the things that you want them to do, you're teaching them. You're teaching them by not being there. The same way that if you've got a child who you know has got one strategy for solving problems, and that's to biff someone the moment that he doesn't get his way, then you know you have to be there and you have to be more direct in what you're teaching us. So you will coach him. You'll say, remember, we keep our hands to ourselves, use your words, right? So we're more direct in our teaching. But every day that we're a teacher, we've got this toolbox that we pull out different tools for different things, and they don't always look like that traditional, I'm up the front teaching you something, or I'm the drill sergeant or whatever. And I think it's just important to keep that in mind. So in play, in order for us to be able to balance play that is child-led, so that we're not going to get involved and take over, we come in almost as an observer first. We watch, we notice what's going on, we recognize the learning, and then we plan our response. So that response might be just simply to add more resources into the space. That's still teaching. It might be to specifically, directly teach a skill. It might be to come in and notice something and make a comment and then step back and see if that worked. Loads of different things. That's all being a teacher. It's all the same thing.
What's one moment of play that you've witnessed that still gives you goosebumps?
Ooh, gosh, there's been so many. I think probably the ones that I love watching the most is when I see other children teaching their peers something in the play that was taught ages ago, and now they're sort of passing that on to other kids in the play. And to me, that just sums up what learning should be, and that it's this reciprocal, collaborative experience where, and I know it sounds, we all talk about ako and we talk about, reciprocal learning and teaching, but to me, we are all learners. And to be able to see children sharing their knowledge with others, and particularly being an expert in their field and teaching someone else, I think is just amazing. Because as a teacher, I can sit back and kind of go, that's great, my job's done. I can just savor in this moment.
That shared,
and see the mana,
experience.
that these kids have as they become the teacher. I think it's pretty cool. So I see that quite a bit. The more that the play space becomes really honouring to that child-led kaupapa of play.
Nice. And for our educators and teachers out there who might be struggling a little bit with ideas in terms of how to resource play, what are some simple ways to enrich a play environment without needing to go and purchase a whole lot of expensive resources?
Yeah, well, first of all, don't buy expensive resources. If you're buying things that are expensive, they're probably going to be the wrong stuff. We always say that it should be cheap or very, very free if possible.
Nice.
My daughter has been known in the car to sink down in the passenger seat as mum's been pulling over to the side of the road and opening up the boot as I've seen something on a skip somewhere. So you do have to get a little bit resourceful. Your investment is time, not money. So just, give yourself an afternoon on the weekend or every couple of weeks to just go down to the beach and get some driftwood, or go and have a drive around the industrial site and have a look in some skip bins, or talk to some tradies or that kind of thing. Get your community working for you. If they know that you are a carer and you need these sorts of resources that are free or cheap parts, small and large loose parts, get them to donate them to you as much as possible. One of the things, though, that we do suggest is really watch play that you do have and identify the urges or the schema that's going on, so that you kind of narrow in. So you're not spending all your time on the wrong stuff that your children won't play with, but look at things, if you've got construction going on in your space, then naturally look for more construction resources, things that children can build with. But don't go and get, small world stuff that they're just not into at the moment. It's a waste of your time. So get a little bit of that data. Again, notice, recognize, respond. Get the data, look at it, recognize the urges, and then from there, have a little look at what you can gather that might be useful for things like building or transportation or transformation or trajectory and things like that, enclosure. So be familiar with the schema and then resource to the schema.
Nice. I like that connection, and also that idea of just going out and using the environments that you've got around you and only investing time. And we had a Tiny Nation Hui earlier in the year, and we gave the better part of a day to our visiting teachers and a very small budget to go out and create their own heuristic play kits using the environments around Hawke's Bay and also local op shops and thrift shops and repurposing, things. And we then had a bit of a show and tell at the end of it. And the stuff that they managed to get their hands on and come back with was just incredible. Yeah. And I know that it's been so valued out in the regions as they've been able to take them along to the playgroups and share and inspire educators.
It's loads of fun. I mean, I ran a loose parts workshop in Amsterdam, of all places, at a conference there. And so I didn't really want to take loose parts in my suitcase all the way to Amsterdam. So my daughter and I had a half day exploring Amsterdam looking for loose parts.
Oh, good.
And just so much fun. I mean, really interesting loose parts you can find there. Yeah. But it was just amazing. We really didn't have to spend anything or go too far to get exactly what you need for play. And these were for adults with play in a workshop. So it can be done anywhere, doesn't have to cost money. Get your kids involved. Go out for a walk to the park and get them to collect things for you in the park. They'll know what to look for and what they want to play with. Yeah. So it's just time that's the investment. Yeah.
Perfect. Look, I'm going to burn through a few questions now because we're almost hitting our deadline. Can you share a few go-to prompts or questions that adults can use to deepen children's thinking during play?
Yeah, sure. So one of the things that I would suggest is that you don't ever start anything with a question. Don't say what, when, why, how, where. Instead, start with I. Either I or use the child's name. And that just positions your brain in a way that you're going to be giving what you think or what you're noticing the child doing rather than putting a demand on the child to answer a question and pull them out of their play. So the one that we use the most is I wonder. And I used I wonder simply because you could be wrong. And if you're wrong, a child can tell you you're wrong. But it also means that they get the insight into what you're wondering in your brain. So they're hearing another brain. And it just means that they have the option to answer or not. And if, there's plenty of times I've wondered and no one's answered and I've kind of gone, oh, back off, try again. So I wonder is a great one. Have you thought about is another one. And then probably some of the more deeper questions that you would ask once you're in conversation with children. One of the ones that I really like is, what's the weirdest thing that happened as you were building this, right? So things that enable kids to think really sideways rather than answering these sort of standard questions. What did you do? And how did you, what's the weirdest thing that just happened? Because what we're trying to do is really kind of grow that creative response and creative reflection. And the one other thing I would also say is this reminds me of, and try and connect what you're seeing with something that might be happening in the real world or that you've seen in the real world so that it connects play out into the wider world.
Okay, that's really helpful. Thank you. What would you say to a parent or an educator, and just moving back to that transition to school theme, who is worried that, and we do have these conversations a lot with whānau around their interpretation of play and it not being enough in terms of what their child needs in order to be school ready or in order to kind of have the literacy, numeracy, classroom readiness that we hear talked about a lot in those pedagogical circles. So what would you say to that parent?
Yeah, so this is a whole other podcast. In a nutshell, if your child is not playing, they will not be ready for literacy and numeracy. If you focus on getting your child ready by reading, having them learn the alphabet song, flashcards, drills, all of that kind of stuff, and they don't get play because they're focusing on that, they will not be ready. Simple example is one of the key skills that we need for a child to learn to read is what we call the return sweep. So they need to be able to have directionality left to right. That's how we read, left to right, and then the return sweep down, left to right again, right? For them to be able to have left to right, they've got to have directionality, which means they've got to be able to know which side of their body is which, and also crossing the midline. We can only do that when we move and play. The next thing we also need to know is that return sweep, which is similar to, for example, if we kick a ball and we kick the ball with the left, kick the ball with the right, kick the ball with the left, kick the ball with the right. That's our return sweep. So there are big physical movements that are actually pre-reading skills that we need. We've got this idea that reading and writing looks a certain way.
Yes.
But we actually need all of this other stuff. Rhythm, rhyme, patterning, all those things come through play. But the biggest thing, if you want your children to be ready for formal reading and writing, is have them talk. Talk to them, you talk back, they hear people talking, you do a lot of return and serve interactions. Oral language is the foundation of reading and writing. And if a child doesn't have good oral language, they will not be a good reader or writer. So that play provides that curriculum for that.
Okay, I'm going to ask you one more big question before we go into our quick fire round, and it's really just to play into the space that you've been playing in more recently, which is the work that you've been doing internationally to promote play-based learning, and you just talked about your experience in Amsterdam. Can you share a moment from your international travels that has affirmed for you the universal power of play and how these experiences might have shaped your approach back here in Aotearoa?
I think, gosh, every moment that I'm in a classroom overseas or I'm in an event that is play-based, no matter the geographical context. For example, I do some work with an organisation in Nigeria, I work with an organisation in India, and then we go to Canada, Australia, the UK. The context is so varied, but the one thing that we all know children need is play and the desire for play to be there. And whenever I'm in these different classrooms, I see the same play. It might just be with different stuff, but the children still want to do the same thing, which is to play and explore and try out different things. And really play is this universal way of making sense of our world and making sense of who's in our world with us. And so, every moment that I'm away, I just continue to come. I must admit, I come back into New Zealand at the moment a little depressed because I think, oh, why aren't we getting it? Because it's all there. But again, even seeing children playing in snow in a way that here in New Zealand we'd see them playing with water or sand or something like that. It's just totally universal. I just hope that we get it more and more. Yeah.
And embrace it. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
All right, we're going to do a quick fire round to close. And this
All
is essentially a round that we're building into all of our Tiny Talks episodes. So the same questions. And
do I get a prize? Is it like
thing that comes into your mind?
Right, okay. All right, okay.
So just go with your gut.
Okay.
And generally, it's going to be a very quick response. So first question, favorite children's book that gives you all the feels?
My New Blue Shoes. Yeah. I found it in my Teachers College library when I was a first-year Teachers College student and had to sit down on the floor and read it. And it was
my New Blue Shoes. Who's it
my
by?
Oh, I have to look it up. It's about a little girl who gets some new blue shoes and she goes to the shoe shop and it was my childhood. So
beautiful. Okay. This is a good one for you. This plays beautifully into your play background. What is the most underrated resource to use with children?
Oh gosh, sticks.
Sticks. Easy. They can be anything, right? What's one value that you hope every child learns from the adults around them?
That they're loved.
Yes. Beautiful. The funniest thing a child has said that has made you pause and think?
Gosh, there's been a lot. Funniest. I'm not sure about the funniest, but I was in a bush kindy in Brisbane and I heard a child say there's a snake and that made me pause and think.
Of course it would.
And then being told by 3-year-olds what the snake stomp is and being taught how to look after myself if I found a snake by 3-year-olds. So I, again, was the learner that day.
We all have something to learn from those around us. Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah.
All right. Last one. If you could give every parent or caregiver one tool or reminder, what would it be?
To trust children, to trust that they know what it is that they need for their learning and to give them that little bit more autonomy to lead that and for you to be able to just be a part of it rather than controlling or directing it. Just trust children a little bit more.
Nice. Learn to let go.
Yeah, absolutely. Break into the song, let it go.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Awesome. Hey, thank you so much, Sarah. I think we could have 20 podcasts full of different, rich and wonderful things, but you have your own podcast, don't you?
We do, yeah. Over on Spotify.
So plug that if you've enjoyed this chat with Sarah. Sarah, just share a little bit more about your podcast.
Yeah, so we have a podcast that we're in our 5th year now of our podcast. It's called Play Conversations. It's available on Spotify. So just go on over there and we've got classroom experts, we've got international experts, we've got all sorts of people chatting about things to do with play and particularly play pedagogy, but all from an educator or international expert view or lens. So yeah, join us on Spotify for that.
Hey, thanks so much for joining us, Sarah.
You're welcome.
Play is most certainly the way, and we look forward to all of the inspiration that will no doubt come from this chat.
Wonderful. Thanks, Erin.
Ka kite.
Ka kite.
Calling all educators. If you've ever dreamed of working in a way that honours your values, your lifestyle and your love for children, Tiny Nation is your next step. We're on a mission to grow our incredible community of home-based educators across the country, and we're making it easier than ever to get started. With flexible support, exclusive professional development and a values-led approach, Tiny Nation helps you turn your passion into purpose. Head to tinynation.co.nz to learn more about our educator grant and transition support campaign. Let's build something beautiful together.